Thank you, Tom. It's an honor to get to introduce a good friend of mine, Congressman Comer. I served in the House of Representatives with him for several years. He was there way before I was. He was elected in 2000.
I look a lot older.
Yeah, well, you've been around longer, that's right. He's from Monroe County, Tompkinsville. If he'd been born 5 miles down the road, he'd been a Tennessee fan and a congressman from the state of Tennessee, so we're glad he fell over on this side of the line. But anyway, I served with him, and I left the House in 2009, and he ran for Ag Commissioner in 2011. Did a great job as Ag Commissioner. In fact, Ryan Quarles now is really doing well as Ag Commissioner because of the groundwork that Congressman Comer, the foundation that he built for him to be able to do the things that he's doing. And so big thanks to Congressman for, from the farmers in Kentucky, which he did really serve well as Ag Commissioner. And he ran for Congress in 2016, and he's the congressman now from the 1st District of Kentucky, which runs from the Mississippi River to Marion County. It even links over a little bit into Washington County. We're going to do redistricting here before long, but under the federal redistricting, where the Constitution says one person, one vote, they actually get the congressional districts on one day. They're plus or minus one vote. So that's why they carve out that little section in Washington County. They were looking for a place that had the exact number of votes that they needed, and that section of Washington County, Thompsonville, Pottsville.
But how do
I heard fire quality of people senators, what they were looking for.
I won't go there. But anyway, so we'll see redistricting as we get into our census here in the very near future. One of these days when the congressman comes back, that's what we'll be talking about. But I can tell you he's a very hard-working congressman. He covers a huge geographic area, and if you follow him on Twitter, you will see him. He's in this August recess, and now into September. He's probably visited every county in his congressional district, and that's a tall undertaking, Congressman. So I won't take any time. I just want to tell you what an outstanding person he is and what a great job he's doing in Washington, D.C. And the proof is there. This past year we did the ag bill. It went to a conference committee, and there was 47 people, I think, on the conference committee. And Kentucky was the only state to have 2 of their congressional district on that committee. Of course, Senator McConnell and Congressman Comer. So, and he did a great job for Kentucky and for the agricultural community in that farm bill. So thank you for that. Thank you for your hard work. And let me introduce to you today, and please make welcome Congressman Comer.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jimmy, and I can't say enough good things about Jimmy Higdon. You're very well represented in Frankfort with Senator Higdon. He is a player in Frankfort. He's always working hard to try to get more infrastructure and more jobs to Marion counties. I appreciate your friendship and the great work that you do in Frankfort. I appreciate the judge and mayor being here, and Tom, and all the people that make this community great. I appreciate seeing you today. I appreciate you coming out, and I'm going to give you a brief update on Washington, and then if we have a few minutes left over, if you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer the questions. But first, Jimmy touched on something that I'm really trying to encourage and educate people about, and he talked about redistricting. And redistricting comes about after the census, and we'll be doing that census next year. And I can't explain how important that census is to Marion County, to Kentucky, and the 1st Congressional District, because everything's determined with respect to your representation, not just your state senator and your state representative, but also the U.S. representatives and how many representatives we have in Kentucky based on the census. And I don't think, just from what I've learned in my congressional district 10 years ago, I think there were a lot of counties that didn't do a very good job counting everyone. And I can assure you, states like California, if you watch the news, they're really focused on making sure they count everyone. And when you're counting everyone, that's everyone. If they're a citizen or not, you still count that person in the census because it's how many people live in the community. That's what determines the makeup of Congress. And 20 years ago, Kentucky had 7 representatives. Then because of the census, we went down to 6 representatives. And I sure hope we don't go down to 5 representatives. Just to put that into perspective, California has 52 representatives. 52 representatives. So when people ask me, how does Nancy Pelosi get to be Speaker of the House? When you have a state with 52 representatives and 47 of the 52 are Democrats, that's a 47 vote start. That's a pretty good start when you're running for Speaker of the House. That's a third of the votes she needs to secure the nomination from her conference. So every vote counts, and it all starts with the census. Another thing a lot of people don't realize, the state legislature draws the lines. And that's in the news a lot because there are a lot of states that are challenging the constitutionality of the congressional districts. There's a term called gerrymandering if you draw the lines an odd way. The state legislature draws the lines for Congress. They draw the lines for themselves in the state House and state Senate. They also draw the judicial lines. So Jimmy will be a player when we have redistricting next year in Frankfort. And Jimmy, I just want you to know I love Kentucky. Okay, I love the state, but please don't put this district in with Louisville. Okay, all right. But Jimmy does a great job, and I appreciate him. We've had a real good meeting today talking about economic development. I have to recognize my friend Brian Lacefield. He's the state FSA director, Farm Service Agency director. He's a constituent of mine from Hopkinsville. Appreciate the good work you're doing, Brian, and your friendship over the years. So I think most people know we've been in what they used to call August recess, but now they try to call it the August work period because it sounds better than recess, for the last 5 weeks. And during that time period, I have, as Jimmy Higdon said, tried to visit all 35 counties in the 1st Congressional District. But the Congress goes back into session on Monday. So I'll be back, all the members of Congress will be back to Washington Monday. When we left the last day of July, I felt like when we got back on Monday, we would be discussing some different healthcare reform proposals. But a lot's happened over the 5 weeks, and somehow the gun control issue has risen back to the top, and you know it's those are the issues that are the most divisive. Any type of what I would consider somewhat of a social issue are the issues most divisive. They're the issues the media likes to cover the most. You know, we'll have a lot of committees meeting next week talking about just about every major issue in America. But the media will only cover any meeting that pertains to the Mueller report and impeachment or gun control now. So I like to remind everyone that there are a lot. I'm on the Agriculture Committee. We have meetings all the time. They're the most boring meetings in the world. No media outlet would cover it, not even the farm journals. They're so boring. But also on the Education Committee, Education and Labor, there's no shortage of issues that that committee has jurisdiction on. We meet a lot, as does the Oversight Committee, the 3 committees that I'm on. But you know, the actions where the issues that are most divisive and most controversial, that's like a magnet drawing the national press corps to. So sometimes you get frustrated watching the news saying they're obsessed with the Mueller report or they're obsessed with impeachment. I'm not. but I can tell you the overwhelming majority of Congress is working on things that are important to the area, whether it's economic development issues, regulatory issues, education issues. We're trying to get to a consensus on issues that I think are of the utmost importance to everyday Americans. One big issue that's in the news that has a huge effect on Marion County in two industries in particular is the current status of the trade war with China. And if you look at the agriculture industry, I know we have some farmers in here. Agriculture, unfortunately, is on the front lines of this trade war. Then you have a big automotive parts industry here in Marion County. And that's the other major industry that's been affected most adversely by the trade war with China. And I want to give everyone an update of where we are, because one day if you watch CNBC or if you look at your 401k or your stock portfolio, the market's up 300 or 400 points one day and it's down 300 or 400 points the next day. And they say that, well, one day before the market opens, there's talks that there's progress being made with China, and the market is up 300 or 400 points. And then the next day before the market opens, a commentator will come on there. We heard last night the talks broke down between the United States and China, and the market goes down 400 points. The truth of the matter is there's really not been any progress made in one direction or the other over the past probably 45 days, because there's a line in the sand drawn on this trade war. The biggest issue among many issues, if you broke it down to two issues that we have with China, is number one, they manipulate their currency. And that's a big deal, because you've heard if the dollar's strong or if the dollar's weak. If China needs the American dollar to be strong to be in an advantageous position on importing or exporting, they weaken their currency. If they need the dollar to be weak, then they strengthen their currency. Whatever they need to do to have a competitive advantage over the United States, they do. And they've been doing that for over 20 years. And they did it about 3 weeks ago. That's one issue. The other issue is the patent theft, where they steal our patents, they steal our intellectual property. You have companies like Apple that will spend a lot of time and money in research and development. And those, Apple, all those companies that are the big innovators, they're based in the United States. So they have 25% of their budget spent on research and development. They invent an iPhone. And then China sits back and they don't invest 25% in research and development. They just wait for Apple or any other American company to come up with the next big thing, and then they get it and they take it apart and say, well, we can make this, and we'll make it cheaper than Apple. So Apple can either buy them from us, or we're going to put Apple out of business through dumping. That's the terminology called dumping. And that's been happening for 20 years, and it's been more advantageous for Apple to try to let China just make these than having these manufactured in the United States. And that's not fair. And you've gotten into a system to where we've lost a lot of manufacturing in the United States, even though we're the strongest economy, we have the most per capita spending. We've lost a lot of good manufacturing to China because they have a competitive advantage. So there's really not a trade agreement in place with China that would apply to what we need. And presidents in both parties, the last 4 presidents, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, have complained about China, but they've not done anything about it. And here's why: because it's tough. It's a tough battle. China has more people than we have, and China has no debt. In fact, they own a lot of our debt. We have a $21 trillion debt, which is unacceptable. But China's in a stronger position than the United States because they've been, taking advantage of us for the last 20 years. I'm for free market. If China can invent this phone and make this phone cheaper in China than we can in the United States, I'm fine with that. I'll buy the cheapest phone. But it's not a fair process. And we can't continue to surrender manufacturing to China. If you look at and read things that people like Warren Buffett say, who's probably the greatest investor of my lifetime. He's a little more liberal than I am on a lot of issues, but he's obviously smart in business, a lot smarter than I am. And he says you can't continue to outsource everything in the United States. And he makes this real simple graph, and I've heard him give this presentation many times. If you are a rich country and you outsource everything you purchase to poor countries, over time those poor countries become the rich countries, and the rich country becomes the poor country. And he said he fears that's what's happening in the United States. So we have to at least have a level playing field. And I think that with the entrepreneurial spirit we have in the United States, with the superior educational opportunities we have in the United States, I think the United States will prevail in that. But we can't continue to surrender it. So the president has taken a stand. He's drawn a line in the sand. And it's tough. You know, we've had some short-term pain, especially in agriculture and automotive parts manufacturing. But in order for long-term gain, in order for the next generation of Marion Countyans to have the opportunities that we had, we are going to have an environment to where we manufacture things in the United States, good paying jobs. The jobs like Tom and the judge and the mayor have been recruiting here in Marion County. So I think this is a battle that has to be fought. And I think in the end, we're going to be victorious because their economy is hurting more than our economy. And you can see that with the unrest around Hong Kong now. And in that area, those people that are protesting and picketing and complaining, they're in their 20s and they've never experienced a downturn. Their entire life, they had more than they had each year than they had the previous year. They've just seen a huge increase in their standard of living for the last 20 years. And in China, it's not like the United States if a factory shuts down. If a factory shuts down in Lebanon on one of your industrial sites, the state will be in there that day with people to help provide a safety net to sign them up for unemployment insurance. They don't have unemployment insurance in China. So if their factory has to shut down because of the trade war, they don't have a paycheck. And people don't like it when stuff like that happens. You know, you have to provide for your family and things like that. So I think that we're starting to see it's hurting China more than it's hurting us. And hopefully we can get to the point to where we can sit down and have, at the very least, not necessarily a deal that says, okay, if we buy X from you, you have to buy Y from us. That's not really free trade, fair trade. It's to where it says, okay, there's a governing board, like the World Trade Organization type thing, that says if you manipulate their currency, we can protest and it can be resolved real quickly. Or if you're stealing our patents, there's a world court or something where we can take you. Because if you're in the United States and you steal Apple's patent, you're going to be in court pretty quick. We can't do that in China. So those are the two basic principles that we're fighting for in this trade agreement. And I think it's a battle that we have to have, because you've heard me say this probably a lot. Not every county in Kentucky has been as successful as Marion County at recruiting industry. I will continue to say this. Marion County is the role model for Kentucky as far as a community this size to have been as successful at recruiting as many and good quality industries as you have over the last 20 years. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing the quality industry that you have here, because you listen to a lot of counties, and I live in one, where they complain, oh, we don't have a interstate, we don't have, infrastructure, we don't have a college, university. Well, you all don't either, but you have successfully recruited so many quality industries here. You need to write the book for the rest of the state. But regardless, if we're going to revitalize rural America, we have to do it through manufacturing. We have to make things. We can't continue to outsource everything to China. So I wanted to mention that, and I don't think anything's changed over the last 2 or 3 months, because both sides are pretty set in stone. This is what the United States wants, and China continues to deny that they manipulate their currency or that they steal our patents. So I know that President Trump, I've been in several meetings with President Trump, he's not going to back up. I'm pretty sure President Xi in China isn't going to back up either. So I think this is going to be an ongoing trade battle for many, many more months on down the road. But eventually, I feel confident that we'll come to a compromise that'll be good for the American worker and that will be good for rural America. So I wanted to mention that. We've got a few minutes. I know I was told everybody had to be out of here at 1 o'clock. Does anybody have any questions about any other issues? Jimmy?
You put me in charge of introducing your staff, and I failed to do that.
Oh, I forgot.
Shirley Cash from your Washington, D.C.
Yep.
office.
She's from Graves County, yeah.
Okay. And then the queen of constituent service work,
Yeah.
Sandy Simpson. I spend more time on the phone sometime, Congressman, with Sandy Simpson than I do a lot of people at my office in Frankfurt. So she does a great job with constituent service work. She does a great job in Marion County representing you, and I just wanted to make sure that we pointed both those staff people out, because you can't do your job without
That's right.
people. So thank you all for what you do.
And Sandy Simpson's in charge of complaints. If anybody has any complaints, see Sandy Simpson. So, does anyone have any questions about anything in Washington that's going on or going to happen next week? Yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned the healthcare reform. Can you talk to anything about that?
Yeah. Great question. I had a town hall in Allen County in Scottsville yesterday, and that was as it always is at every town hall, the most asked question. So I think everyone remembers 3 years ago, my first year in Congress, President Trump's first year, there was an effort to repeal and replace Obamacare, and it never made it to the president's desk. There was a bill that passed the House. We could talk about that all day long. It didn't pass the Senate, and nothing ever came before the president. So that was an unsuccessful effort to make major reform to health care. What I think the president's trying to do now is look at different parts of the healthcare industry. What can we agree on? What can Republicans and Democrats agree on, other than everyone agrees we have a healthcare system that's failing and it's on an unsustainable path? But what can we agree on to try to fix this broken healthcare system in pieces? So there are two things that are kind of rising to the top that we're going to continue to be having committee hearings on. And the first is prescription drug reform. Specifically, the main drugs that a majority of Americans have to take, like insulin, which have seen a huge price spike in the last 5 years for really no reason. Or a drug that is very expensive in the United States, but it's the same drug manufactured for the same company that's significantly cheaper in other countries. Why is this? So we've been having hearings, we've been subpoenaing CEOs of prescription drug companies. I'm a pro-business, free market guy, but the problem in healthcare, in my opinion, is there are too few health insurance companies and too few private health insurance companies, and the drug companies continue to buy out, the big drug companies continue to buy out the generic drug companies, therefore eliminating competition from a cheaper supplier of that drug. So I think we're going to see major prescription drug reform with respect to certain drugs, not across the board, but with respect to certain drugs like insulin. The other healthcare issue that is gaining momentum is medical billing transparency. If you've ever had an experience where you go to get a procedure done and you keep getting bills and bills and bills, and you don't know what these bills are for, and you don't know, is this a bill I'm supposed to pay? Is this a bill the health insurance company is supposed to pay? I don't think it has to be that hard. And, my father was a dentist. I have a lot of friends in the healthcare, medical providers. They do excellent work. You have a tremendous hospital here and some tremendous doctors here in Marion County. But I really believe you should know, if you're going to have a surgery like a gallbladder surgery, I think you should know how much it's going to cost. I don't think that's asking a lot. I think that there should be an easier way for consumers to shop. So this is what this procedure is going to cost in Lebanon. This is what this procedure is going to cost in Camelsville. This is what this procedure is going to cost in Louisville. transparency in billing, transparency in charging. You go into a restaurant, you have a menu, you know exactly what that steak's going to cost that you're going to order, and you have different sizes. And, you know, there are a lot of variances. You know, some hospitals may have better doctors. Some hospitals may have more modern equipment. Some hospitals may have a better track record and more positive comments from consumers. But we have to make this a better process. And I think that is a step in the right direction. Instead of maybe completely overhauling 16% of our gross domestic product, which is healthcare, but maybe taking different pieces of it. Like, what's the worst? What are the worst parts of healthcare? You know, the huge spike in certain prescription drugs prices, and the lack of transparency in billing and in pricing healthcare. That's what we're going to try to get a consensus on. I know we met with the director of the Campbellsville Hospital this week. We're going to meet with the hospital here in Lebanon, and I have 28 hospitals in my congressional district, by the way. That's more than any representative in Congress. There are 435 representatives, so we have 28 hospitals, and we want to make sure that we're not doing anything that has unintended consequences to the hospitals, but at the same time, we want transparency in billing. We have superior technology today. You shouldn't have to get so many different bills and the bills be so hard to understand. So that's kind of what we're working on. It sounds like it should be an easy fix, but there are a lot of pieces to it, and it's very, very complicated. Well, it's 12:59, and Tom's told me to be done at 1. If anybody has any questions or anything you want to talk about afterwards, I'll stick around till the last person leaves. Sandy Simpson's in charge of complaints. If you're really upset about something, just take it out on Sandy. But I do appreciate the friendship and the support here in Marion County, and if there's ever anything that our office can do for you, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Thank you all.
Congressman,
Thank you.
we always have an agricultural gift.
All right.
Agricultural-based gift.
I love it. I love it. All right. Thank you.